Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we start a brand new series using the newly released FS Academy Commander program. Commander includes 12 action-packed missions that will arm you with the framework to deal with anything fate throws your way. This includes emergency landings, system malfunction, hazardous weather, and more. Now before we jump into mission number 1, there are a couple things I want to go over to help make your missions enjoyable. First off, read the manual. The manual is packed with good information on each mission and will provide guidance as needed. Commander was created using default aircraft, so please keep that in mind if you are using any aircraft enhancement mods. If something doesn't seem right, try the mission again using just the default aircraft. And lastly, you'll want to set your turbulence settings to low as stated in the manual. If you do end up running into any issues, make sure you do check out the FS Academy website under the support section. They usually keep a log of any known issues. Alright, that's enough talking. Let's get these going. Here we are, folks, lesson number 1. Looks like we are going to have some simulated engine failure here, so this should be interesting.
FS Academy Commander. From single-engine piston to stratosphere cruising airliner, the Commander must be ready for any eventuality. The pilot in command, PIC, must possess the skill and knowledge to stay calm under pressure, bringing their aircraft home safe even in the face of adversity. Commander is here to give you the tools that will allow you to take charge of any situation and deal with challenging scenarios with a structured approach. This is no small task, but I'm here by your side every step of the way as your onboard instructor. Lesson steps are shown on screen in the objectives panel, which should be displayed throughout your training. For the best experience, be sure to download the manual from fsacademy.co.uk, which digs deeper into the theory behind each scenario. For this first lesson, the manual contains a diagram of the forced landing procedure to make it easier to visualize in flight. We'll start small and build you up to more challenging and complex scenarios, beginning here in our Cessna 152 above the Isle of Wight in the United Kingdom. Maintain 2,500 feet following the coastline towards Cowes and we'll get started.
Alright, we'll
When
do.
operating a single-engine aeroplane, an important but overlooked factor is to take note of potential safe landing sites around you in case we need to land immediately due to an engine malfunction. On our way to Cowes, take a look out to your left and see if you can pick out any fields that would be suitable for an emergency landing. Now turn left slightly and point us towards Hurst Castle. Choosing a suitable landing site needs careful but speedy consideration, as with every passing moment after your engine stops, your options become narrower. To help us identify a usable field, we can consider the 5 S's: size, shape, surface, slope, and surroundings. Take this field as an example. It would be too small to land on, plus it has buildings and tall trees all around, making it unsuitable. Take this darker looking field over to our left as another example. This this field is filled with solar panels. Take note of its appearance, as this would be a poor choice as a landing site. A field with a steep downhill slope would increase our stopping distance considerably, whilst an upslope would aid our deceleration at the expense of a more difficult touchdown. Additional landing distance will also be required in wet conditions. A wet grass surface has similar braking properties to snow, so this must also be taken into account along with rough ground such as ploughed fields. It has been known for small aircraft to make emergency landings on roads. This can work out on very large but quiet stretches of multi-lane highway, as found in many rural areas of the United States. However, as you can see, in much of Europe and the UK, you are unlikely to find such clear roadways, and attempting a landing here would be unwise. Vehicles, bridges, lighting and signage all pose significant obstacles, making roads an unlikely best course of action. Sports fields and public parks are also to be avoided, in order to avoid putting people on the ground into harm's way. In summary, we want the largest and emptiest field available, with no tall obstacles near the touchdown point. Along with landing sites, we should be armed with a few important pieces of information so that we can tip the odds in our favour. We want to know which airspeed to target in order to achieve the best gliding distance. For the 152, the Pilot's Operating Handbook, POH, states that this is 60 knots. We want to have a rough idea of the elevation of the ground below us so that we can approximate our height, an important consideration for planning our landing. An estimated wind direction is another piece of the puzzle, as wherever possible we want to land with a headwind, as this minimises our stopping distance. From the forecast we know that the wind is only around 5 knots from the east. In flight we can often see clues to the wind direction, such as blowing steam or smoke from fires and chimneys, so look out for these as a gross error check. If we look out to the left, we can see some good candidates for landing sites. Plenty of space, minimal obstacles, and looks quite flat. This appears to be a good option.
Yep, looks good to me.
When an emergency situation arises, we must stay focused and deal with the issue in a methodical manner. This means that we will aviate, navigate, and then communicate in that order whenever dealing with an emergency. This will be a common theme throughout Commander. Once an engine failure has been recognized, and before we start to troubleshoot or make any radio calls, our first priority is to settle the aeroplane at our gliding speed of 60 knots. Then we can steer towards our field and set ourselves up for our forced landing. As we head towards Hurst Castle, stay on the lookout for potential landing sites to get in the habit of doing this regularly.
We land down there, maybe over there on that edge over there right before the water.
Now let's make a left turn towards the Needles and we'll discuss the forced landing procedure. There are two key points that we use to plan our approach, the high key and the low key. The high key is equivalent to the downwind leg of a normal circuit, where we want to pass alongside our touchdown point at 1,000 feet above ground level, AGL. The low key is at 500 feet AGL and is where we make our final turn towards the landing field. In this area we have a typical elevation of around 200 feet, so we will add this to these figures, making them an indicated altitude of 1,200 feet and 700 feet respectively. We aim to fly our approach to a field in a similar way to a normal airfield circuit, as this will help us to judge our descent more easily, and it gives us an opportunity to visually inspect the field before we commit to it. Now please make a left turn to follow the coast eastbound, aiming for Freshwater Bay. We are heading towards Freshwater Bay as we don't want to stray too far out over water. We need to always remain within gliding distance of a landing site, and these cliffs to our left pose an obstacle, meaning we need to remain tight in to the coast in order to be able to glide over them. Once we pass Freshwater Bay, we'll get familiar with the controls you'll need to run the engine failure and emergency landing checklists. Keep tracking the coastline to the right towards the lighthouse at St. Catherine's Point. After an engine failure, the first action is to establish ourselves at the best glide speed for our aeroplane. That's 60 knots in our case. Then, as we fly towards our high key, we run the engine failure checklist. Let's look at the controls involved, but don't move them just yet. Some of these are switches located behind the yoke, so please click on the yoke click spot at its base to hide it now. You can redisplay the yoke at any time, but consider keeping it hidden for this lesson, as you will need quick access to the switches behind it when running the checklist. The first item on the checklist is to turn on the carburetor heat, in case icing in the engine intake caused the stoppage. Next, we ensure that the fuel primer is in and locked. This can be a simple cause of fuel starvation, so it is worth checking. On the cockpit floor between our seats is the fuel shut-off valve. We check that this is on. This is hard to reach from your seat, so I will help you with this. We set the mixture to full rich using the red control beside the throttle. If the propeller is still turning, we check that the ignition switch is set to both. If the prop is not spinning, we try to turn it by setting the ignition to start. These actions give us our best chance of restoring engine power. Flying the aeroplane remains our top priority throughout any scenario, so holding 60 knots towards our high key is our #1 job. We will attempt engine restarts up until the high key, beyond which we must accept a forced landing is inevitable. Note that with the loss of engine power, the vacuum system is also lost, which means that your attitude indicator and directional gyro will stop working. After the high key, we perform the emergency landing checklist to prepare the aeroplane for a potential hard landing. This checklist mostly comprises of turning fuel and systems off to avoid the risk of fire. We turn the mixture, fuel shutoff, and ignition all to their off positions. We will use full flaps for landing, as this shortens our stopping distance. But as flaps add drag, we only extend flaps once we are sure that we are going to make our field. The flaps are electrically powered, so we only perform the next item, master switch off, once our flaps are extended to their landing position. It's about time we put all this into practice. Keep flying straight ahead towards St. Catherine's Point and simulate an engine failure by pulling the throttle all the way back to idle and keep it there.
Alright, throttle going to idle.
Hold the nose up and allow the speed to come back to 60 knots, our best glide speed. Maintain 60 knots and retrim to relieve any pressure on the elevator.
Alrighty.
See that after an engine failure, we don't just fall out of the sky. We have a relatively modest 500 to 700 feet per minute descent rate. Turn left towards our field to the high key point. Judge your turn to arrive at the high key with 1,200 feet on the altimeter. Let's look at the engine failure checklist. For training purposes, we will run it as a touch drill. The only action to perform now is turning on the carb heat.
Okay, carb heat on.
The checklist continues. Fuel primer is in and locked. Fuel shutoff is on. Mixture is full rich. And ignition set to both as the propeller is turning.
Getting close to that 1200.
At high key now, we want 1,200 feet indicated altitude. Altitude at high key is good. Use your judgment to turn and arrive at the low key at 700 feet indicated. Keep the flaps retracted until just before touchdown.
Alright.
It is at this point that we accept the forced landing and will perform the emergency landing checklist, but we won't do that now as we are just practicing.
Getting close to the low key or a little high. A little fast.
Now turn left and line up with the field, aiming for your landing spot. Only once you are sure that we will make it, use flaps to shorten our stopping distance.
Which field is it? Alright, here we go.
Speed is a little high, so slightly raise the nose to get us back to 60 knots.
There it is. Okay. I think I'm going to come up short.
Alright, that's as low as we should get. Set full power, retract flaps, and raise the nose to the horizon.
Alright, well, I didn't even set flaps, so.
Pitch for around 70 knots and climb straight ahead to 2,500 feet. We can turn the carb heat off again now to improve engine performance.
Carb heat off.
We'll climb away and follow the coast of Ventnor. Level off at 2,500 feet and accelerate back up to 100 knots.
Okay.
As we saw, there often isn't much time to play with, so we have to have an organised approach to dealing with a problem. By aviating first, we always ensure that we keep the aircraft in a safe attitude and... Engine failure, this time for real. Establish at 60 knots and trim.
That did not sound good at all.
I see a good field down and to our left. Turn left towards a high key position. The elevation is higher in this area, about 500 feet. Let's use 1,500 feet for high key and 1,000 feet for low key. Be aware that with a real failure, the propeller adds drag, so we will lose gliding distance. Engine failure checklist. Carb heat on.
On.
Primer is in and locked.
Yep.
Fuel shutoff is on. Mixture is full rich.
Correct.
Prop is turning, so ignition is set to both.
Okay. We need to keep 60 knots. My heart is pumping. Uh-oh. A little fast, but...
Judge your turn to hit the low key at 1,000 feet indicated.
Okay.
We're not getting the engine back. Emergency landing checklist. Mixture off. Altitude at the high key is looking good.
Mixture off. Okay.
Fuel shut off. I'll turn it off for you now. Ignition off. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Golf Foxtrot Sierra Alpha Charlie. Engine failure. Landing in a field near Ventnor. 2 POB. Set flaps when appropriate, then turn the master off. Watch for the trees and get us down safe. I'll delatch my door and move my seat back. You might find a trim change as my weight moves back. Master switch off.
Alright, I am definitely too high, so... Oh, You're gonna land. Watch out for those trees.
Getting a little slow, so lower the nose to regain 60 knots glide speed.
Yep. Woo! Just missed those trees. And here we go. Oh! Ha Wow.
That's it. We're down. This concludes Lesson 1 of Commander. We have covered a lot of ground already, but there is plenty more to come. An engine failure at low altitude leaves very little time or options. But as we go forwards, we will introduce the decision-making process and get you flying some more advanced aircraft, all the way up to a passenger airliner. We'll cover emergency scenarios ranging from severe icing, system malfunctions, electrical failures, and much more. I'll see you next time on a cold and frosty November evening above the Isle of Man. Welcome to FS Academy, Commander.
Wow, that was exhilarating. I had my heart beating really fast there, and as you can see, I was a little high coming in, and then my speed got all wonky and got close to those trees there. Kind of probably clipped a bird's nest or something, but we got it down. We both survived, so I got a B. Hey, I'll take it. Whew, that was awesome. If this is what the rest of them are going to be like, this is going to be amazing. All right, folks, thanks for sticking around. If you liked it, please hit that like button and subscribe. We'll see you for Mission number 2.